Welcome on to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Castlevania Legends, brought to us by Konami. Castlevania Legends is the third of the Castlevania Gameboy trilogy, being released in '97 in Japan and then 1998 in North America and Europe. The game is notable for a handful of reasons, probably the biggest and most notable being that the main character is Sonia Belmont. So not only do you have a female protagonist, but you also have a female Belmont as the lead, which is the first and only time that's happened in the Castlevania series. This would actually make the game a bit controversial as far as the Castlevania timeline and story is concerned. We'll get a little bit more into that as the game goes. As we begin though, you can start a new game or put in a password to continue from where you left off. The game does feature two different difficulties, Standard and Light. I'll be playing through here on the Normal or Standard difficulty. The biggest difference between the two difficulties is that there's less upgrades for the whip in the Easy mode. I'm sure there's a few other differences, maybe less enemies and the like, but for the most part I've always played on the Standard difficulty. After the opening bit of story and cutscene, we then get to see Sonia kind of march across with the kind of level maps above her, similar to the original Castlevania game, and then we actually begin. If you played the other Castlevania games on Game Boy, I always feel that Legends is kind of in the middle between Castlevania Adventure and Belmont's Revenge. I think Belmont's Revenge ended up doing the best with the Game Boy as far as overall movement of the character and weaponries, upgrades, and the like, whereas Legend, they kind of dialed it back. It feels a bit slower than Belmont's Revenge, but thankfully not quite as slow as Castlevania Adventure, which if you've never played before, man does that game go at a crawl. For the most part, the game is your standard Castlevania. You have your whip, there's plenty of enemies that all based around various horror themes and tropes. You have an upgrade system. In this case, you'll be able to grab the orbs, and you can upgrade on the standard difficulty twice, and when you get to that maximum power, you have a fireball that fires out of your whip, similar to the other Castlevania games on Game Boy, and this fireball projectile does half the damage that your whip does, but since it hits such a far distance, it really works well, especially against flying enemies, until those flying enemies start taking more than one hit of damage, in which case, it just kind of slows them down. Similar to its predecessors, Castlevania Legends has branching paths in its levels. Some of these lead to dead ends, health items, extra lives, or occasionally the collectible sub-weapons of the game. If you're able to collect all 5 of these collectible sub-weapons, you'll get the best ending to the game. These collectibles are in the shapes of the standard sub-weapons that you're used to collecting in other Castlevania games, like the Holy Water or Axe, but instead of getting to use them, instead they're just collectible here. When you defeat bosses in this game though, you gain a new ability which works like the game's sub-weapons. They're different than those standard ones, but you still get a cool ability since you're just using those other ones as a collectible. You may be wondering if you actually get any other sort of sub-weapons since you're actually just using the other ones as collectibles, and you do. Every time you beat a boss, you gain a new ability that you can then pause the game in order to bring up the menu and switch between the different abilities if you want to. The other really cool part about Castlevania Legends is the burning mode. You'll notice at the bottom of the screen you have not only your health, but there's also the B meter at the bottom of that, and that is the burning meter. When that's filled up, you can use it, and you'll be able to kind of go into a blazing mode, getting invincibility and double power. This is especially useful, of course, against the game's bosses, and can really end up turning the tide of battle in your favor. So, honestly, most of the bosses in this game becomes a breeze if you keep that burning mode until you make it to each boss encounter. Thankfully, this area is pretty straightforward. To the right, though, you don't want to go up the rope right away. Instead, go past this annoying spear guy to the right side. We're going to go along this path. There's a bunch of bats and other enemies to deal with, but same stuff we've been dealing with in the level. Be careful, though. You'll have to make a couple of jumps on these smaller platforms. This is actually our first test of platforming in the game, and it's actually optional. This is the path that we need to take to get that first collectible sub-weapon, the axe. Once you do get the axe from the far right candle, sitting proudly on its own little platform next to a couple of bats. You then have to double back, go through all the enemies and platforming again, and get back to that rope that we were just at a second ago. Sadly, one of the other things that I wish wouldn't have carried over from other Castlevania Game Boy games is rope climbing and just being so slow. It's also finicky at times. Being able to grab the rope, like if you jump in midair, you gotta make sure that you hit up on the D-pad in order to grab the rope. You won't auto grab it. When you're jumping off of the rope, you can jump off of it or you can hold the button to slide down it. But jumping off the rope, of course, you gotta make sure you have enough space so you'll safely land on an area. You don't really move that far. She's very heavy in the air. As well as also, if you're just trying to hold the button down to quickly slide down a rope, you can accidentally jump off to the left or right, and if you don't have enough time, you won't be able to get back to the rope and safely re-grab it, or land on a safe platform. You'll end up losing a life. So a lot of times, I do that really painful, slow climb down the rope, just to make sure I don't accidentally press the button and jump off the rope to kill myself. Thankfully though, for the rest of the level, it's pretty much a straightforward path. Stages in Castlevania Legends are pretty large, and with your slow movement, it takes a little bit to trek through them. While the bosses in the game can deal quite a bit of damage, the burning mode and the invincibility that it brings makes those bosses a lot easier to tackle, and thus you don't have to worry so much about your health during the main parts of the level. Of course, you'll still want to have as much health as possible going into those fights, but with the burning mode and being able to get so many hits in with that, there's usually only a couple of more hits I need to deliver without burning being activated during boss fights. One of the things though I didn't like about Legend is that because of this, you don't get to see the boss's health, so you're never quite sure how much health they have left before they end up dying. Be careful here on this broken bridge is another platforming segment that we have to deal with, and of course, if we fall into a pit it is an instant death. Though, there is an occasion later on in the game where we will be falling down and that actually leads us to a secret, but that's for a bit later. Once we enter into this door though, it's time for the first boss encounter of the game. This flying gargoyle guy will lower himself from the upper right corner of the screen before eventually flying over to the left side. Now once he does this, we're going to get our burning mode activated and then start immediately jumping up and attacking him. Deliver as many hits as you can to him. You can attack him from the distance with the fireballs until he ends up lunging forward, and you want to stay on that left side, because when he lunges forward, you'll be able to actually hit him directly with your whip instead of the fireballs, and because you're hitting him with the whip directly, it does more damage. Once you do run out of your burning mode, try to stay away from him, whatever side he's on, just stay a little bit away, and when he kind of dives down towards you, just step back a little bit, quickly turn and deliver the last couple of hits you need to finish him off. Once he's defeated though, we're moving on to the next level. You can see at the bottom left of the screen, we now have our first of our abilities that we can use. This is what ends up using up our hearts or our items in this game. Now, the ability we got, the Tornado, stops all enemies on screen like the Stopwatch. So basically it's like having the Stopwatch. And just like that, it can't be used on mid-bosses or bosses of levels. The next set of rooms here were always a bit weird to me, how they're just a single screen, one enemy apiece, and you do several of them in a row. I guess it's to show you that you're slowly progressing through the castle, but it's funny to have like this many of the same exact looking room back to back to back, but just one single enemy apiece. The flying skull guys here are one of the more annoying ones. They're kind of like boos from Mario, where when you're not looking at them, then they start chasing you down. They kind of fly really quickly towards you, and then once they're kind of on the same level as you, they dart really fast, but they're very easy to kind of control and manipulate. It's just when there's a lot of them on screen at once, it becomes a bit harder. Take out the Hunchback guys as much as possible from the distance. You have that fireball, use it in order to hit them without having to get too close and cause them to kind of jump around and become more annoying than they already are. You can ignore the bottom part here where all those candles are, just some extra items. There, the Flying Skull, we kind of get to come down and take him out before continuing along this path. Once again, bait the skull down, take it out before then going down here and taking out this Hunchback. Be careful of the rope, make sure that you hit up when you jump, so you attach yourself to it and then start climbing upwards. Castlevania Legends and a lot of the Game Boy Castlevania games love you heading upwards, and that's always a pain because of course enemies, if you don't know where they're going to spawn, will just appear and you'll end up running into them by accident. While climbing up here, there's an opening to the right that we're going to ignore for right now. Instead, we want to climb up this rope. Bait over this giant flying skull, take him out before climbing up the rope. Make sure you're up high enough so that when you jump over to the right, there's enough space where you can grab that other rope. If you miss, you'll end up losing a life in the pit-like void below, because it's one of those games where if you're climbing down a rope, you're okay, but if you fall down the hole, you die. At the very top of the area, though, there's a candle that contains the Stopwatch, the second of the collectible sub-weapon items that we need to get in the game. Now we're going to track ourselves back downwards and then go to the right of the skeleton dragons to that opening I said to ignore just a few minutes ago. Be very careful and quick across this bridge, just keep on moving. Thankfully though, you'll probably not have any problem to do so. One thing I haven't mentioned yet that you have to keep an eye out for is the candles in the background. Normally we're used to the candles in Castlevania always giving us items. However, sometimes the candles are disguised as dynamite in this game. They look so similar to the candles, it's really hard to tell, and especially on a Game Boy screen, it's really hard to tell. Thankfully, on the Super Game Boy, it's a little bit easier to see them and differentiate between the dynamite and regular candles, but make sure you try to avoid them as much as possible. Since we already have the collectible sub-weapon, we don't need to go down any of the other extra paths or anything for the extra health or lives or anything. So we're just going to kind of work our way through. Climbing down this rope, you can see spikes to the right. There's a door that we're going to be going through in just a minute. However, to get rid of those spikes, and you have to get rid of the spikes first, you have to come down here and take out this knight guy. He marches back and forth a couple of times before eventually turning around and lunging. Thankfully, you can step on the stairs and just easily back away from him when he lunges, just give yourself enough room. Once he's defeated though, climb back up the rope, and now you can go through the right door as the spikes are gone. I tested before, if you use the burning mode and try to go through that door with it, you won't be able to access or go through the door until those spikes are gone. Kind of a failsafe there. And the same goes for right here. More spikes lining the area, go down the rope, take out the knight guy, and then climb back up and go through the door. Thankfully, we have a little bit of a reprieve here, just mostly a straightforward area that we have to march through, take out each individual enemy, bait down the skull guy if you need to, before heading through another door into the next area. This final room before the boss of level 2 is once again another straightforward one. Bait the skull down, deal with the Hunchback from a distance if possible. It can be a little bit difficult to deal with both the skull and the Hunchback at the same time. Make sure that you take them out though before heading all the way over to the right, hit this candle and it'll drop an orb. By picking this orb up, all of a sudden the ceiling will start to break apart and the boss for level 2 is revealed, a giant dragon. I always thought this was a really cool boss, but once again, very easy to kind of take out when you're using that burning ability. Use it as soon as he kind of lowers his head a little bit, then get close and keep doing jump attacks with the whip. Hitting him with the whip, of course, once again does more damage than the fireball, and usually the dragon is taken out before the burning ability runs out because of this. Once you grab the item there, we're moving on to level number 3 of Castlevania Legend. The first segment of level 3 is straightforward. You just have to climb up, watch out for some spikes, and you have some annoying enemies. So slowly start to work your way up. When an enemy kind of spawns, either wait for them to kind of get past you, or take them out if you possibly can without putting yourself at too much risk. These annoying ghost-like things are probably one of the worst enemies in the game, since they kind of hover over you. They always are in the absolute worst places and just constantly getting in the way. Like I mentioned earlier, Castlevania Legends is a bit controversial. The game is actually removed from the main story timeline of Castlevania due to the fact that it kind of conflicts with a few things. There was rumors that it was because of Sonia being a female, but it's more that Sonia is a female Belmont. She also is in a relationship with Alucard, who obviously is a main character of the Castlevania series. After Symphony of the Night and one of its head designers, Koji Igarashi, kind of took over the Castlevania series in general, this led to him making some decisions to remove a bunch of games he didn't think fit with everything. Some of these games were later added back, like the N64 Castlevania games, for example. Legends is one of those ones, though, that remains removed. It's not added to the timeline, it doesn't actually exist as far as the standard Castlevania timeline goes. The team that worked on Legends was kind of separate from the Castlevania main team, and because of this, they weren't really kind of led in the same direction the current Castlevania games at that time were going. Remember, this coming out in 1997, 1998, was at the height of kind of the rebirth of Castlevania with Symphony of the Night. Here we have the first mid-boss that we have to deal with in the game. This flying dragon guy flies up into the air, will fire fireballs straight down. There's 3 kind of diagonal shots he does. Then he'll fly across to the other side of the screen and do the same thing. It's a really simple kind of pattern to kind of get down and fight, but make sure that you don't waste that burning energy. You want to make sure you save that for the real boss of level number 3. In the next segment, you do have a choice of either going on the left side or right. We're going to start off by heading up the left side, as that will lead us to the next screen, the right side leading to the dead end there. As we climb up here, take out the Hunchback from this platform and continue stepping up. You can wait for that ghost guy to kind of come down before jumping up to the next platforms. Now here we have a choice between going left through the opening or continuing upwards. We're going to start up by going to the left here in order to lead us to the collectible item of level number 3. Head on over to the left, dealing with a few enemies along the way, and you'll come to a set of ropes. Climb up either one to the next screen, and then work your way up through a series of platforms and such, and eventually you're going to make it to a candle at the very top that contains the collectible item for this level, which is the knife. You can grab some extra health from the candle on the right side, so be sure to do that if you've taken some damage in the stage so far. Make sure you grab the knife and then head on down, making sure to grab the rope before going down to the next screen. Now, we do not have to continue to the left. This is another one of those dead ends, so we're going to double back to the right and go back to the previous screen here. Once back there, we're going to then start going up the ropes and all that we didn't take before. One of the other interesting notes, though, about Legends is that they were hoping to actually continue the story of Sonia Belmont. There was a Castlevania Dreamcast game in development, Castlevania Resurrection, that unfortunately, of course, never saw the light of day, but Sonia was actually going to be the main character, or at least one of the main characters of that game. Many years later, we would finally get another female protagonist in Castlevania, as we saw with Order of Ecclesia on the Nintendo DS. After we defeated that boss at the end of level 2, we gained a new ability, Ice. Ice actually fully heals you, interestingly enough, so if you get a little bit low on health, you can spend 20 hearts in order to instantly get some health back. So, kind of a cool option, and one of the only Castlevania games that includes an ability like that, or at least classic Castlevanias that includes an ability like that. Here we have another one of those things where we have 2 paths to take. We're going to take the right path. Either way, very slow moving gears will slowly progress you upwards, and you can enter the door on the right here. While it may take a little bit for these slow-moving gear-like platforms to work their way up, it wouldn't be Castlevania really without some kind of clock tower-themed stage. Be careful when moving across all these little chains or ropes, then make it to the next screen. Once again, we're going to be doing the same thing. Have to wait a little bit for these platforms to come down, but eventually we'll continue working our way up. Here is the last screen before we end up dealing with that boss. Take out the hunchback on the platform before jumping onto the rotating gear. Once we get to the top, climb up the rope and prepare yourself for a relatively cool boss. Actually, probably my favorite boss of this game. What I end up liking about this version of Death is kind of its design. I thought it was kind of cool looking, even it's relatively basic. All he really does, though, is jump back and forth and left and right, firing out the different styles of his sickle. Some are like boomerangs that move back and forth, some bounce around or come directly at you. Use that burning ability like always and keep kind of moving back and forth with him left and right. Don't stay on one side and hit him with fireballs. Get in close and try to hit him directly with that whip. Once the boss ends up dropping, though, we're moving on to level number 4. For defeating the level 3 boss, we gain the fire ability. The fire ability flashes the screen and does damage to all the enemies currently on it. Doesn't cost a ton of hearts, but can be very useful for dealing with flying, annoying enemies if you do want to use it. One way to kind of help yourself out, though, as far as dealing with these soldier guys on these platforms, you can bring out that tornado ability and use it to freeze them in place and then take them out before they're able to kind of move back and forth and do that lunging attack that could potentially knock you off the platform and onto the spiky floor below. When you climb up here, you're going to be going to the left, kind of make sure that Sonya gets to the screen to scroll properly so you can see what's ahead of you. You have these annoying worm-like enemies that crawl across the bottom and then pop up once you get near them. In this area here, ignore the chain, deal with the knight guy, and then walk across the bottom part of the floor. Just past that, though, you're going to want to climb up here, deal with this enemy, the weird flower type enemy in the wall, and then when you drop down through the next segment, you'll make it to the mid-boss of the stage, Medusa. For Medusa, just stay on the very far right. Medusa does have an attack and can lunge towards you, but has a straightforward sword stab that cannot hit you if you're ducking, so just duck on the far right side and keep hitting Medusa with fireballs until she ends up dropping. Medusa this time has her head detached like many times, but it kind of just flies away. We don't have to deal with flying Medusa heads or another battle against Medusa later on. Be careful here, climb up, you'll deal with another one of those soldier guys. You can always use the tornado ability if you want to make things even easier for you during this. Be careful with the chains, they move of course back and forth and you want to time it right so that you'll be able to jump onto the chain successfully and don't accidentally end up hitting spikes. Though, if you get hit by a couple of enemy blasts from these weird flowers, at least it won't do too much damage and you can of course heal if you want to. Be careful at the end here when you drop down of the knight. You can land safely between the knight and the spikes and take him out, but if he does end up hitting you and knocking you back on the spikes, quickly step off of them. You have that brief invincibility to do so. On the next screen, work your way up. There's spiders that you'll have to deal with. Just kind of attack them from afar. The second spider here will work its way down towards you, but if you stay on this left platform where this first spider is, you can safely deal with the other one. At the top, we're going to go over to the next screen to the door, and then this is where we're going to change up paths a little bit. You can either go left or go straight up. So once you make it to this next screen, start heading upwards. At the top of the area, you'll come to 2 chains. Climb up either one. You'll have a big room with a bunch of candles. You can actually jump through these platforms, so keep that in mind to kind of quicken things up a bit. Be careful of the worm enemy. Take that one out first, as it will pop up right in front of you. You can kind of duck and deliver a couple of quick hits with a whip. Then you can deal with either the bats or start climbing your way up. It's a bit of an annoying area. We will get our next collectible sub-weapon at the top here. These bats, though, thankfully, even if they hit you and knock you backwards, you'll usually land safely on another platform instead of getting knocked all the way back down, but still gotta be a little bit careful. After grabbing the holy water collectible item, come back down, make sure to jump to the rope, grab it, and then start climbing on down. Once back onto this screen, work your way down, avoiding as many of those bats as you can. Make it hit a time or 2. There's a big spider at the very bottom. Usually I just end up running into him. You can use abilities if you want to, but either way, once past that spider, just climb up the next side and go through the door. Have a nice little window pattern and curtains in the background for this vast hall that we get to walk through here, getting closer and closer to the end of level 4 and the next boss encounter. Climb up the chain, deal with the night guy from a distance. If you're on the chain, you'll be able to easily hit him without him ever getting close enough. Work your way along the top portion here, dealing with some knights as well as those flower guys in the background as you make your way across this giant hall. At the end of the hall, though, we're going to be dealing with the next boss, so try to conserve your health or heal up before we enter into the boss encounter against Alucard. After a bit of story between Alucard and Sonia, the battle actually begins. As soon as it starts, though, immediately go into your burning ability. Then, as he charges forward, you'll be able to hit him with a whip, then go to the opposite side where he is and just keep nailing him with those attacks. Once your burning runs out, you'll have to deal with him. He will fly across the screen. He tries to go quickly across using that sword and dashing ability. After you run out of burning, though, it should only be a few more hits to take him out. We then get another relatively lengthy cutscene before we move on to the next stage. Level number 5, you can see, is a cave. After dealing with Alucard and finding out that now we have to deal with Dracula, of course, we end up getting sent down into these labyrinths below. There's a secret level as well hidden here in this stage. Interesting enough, this is actually the final level of the game, but we'll have to go through it, get to that secret level, and then we come back to the stage to continue and finish it, and eventually face off with Dracula at the end. Now, as far as collectibles go, the last of the collectible sub-weapons is in the bonus level, so you don't have to worry about collecting anything in this stage, you just have to worry about finding that secret exit. Here we just kind of have a one-screen room, just be careful when going down the rope that you don't accidentally get killed by falling through the pit instead of climbing down the pit. On the next screen we have more water and more merman enemies that will pop out of the water to try to grab a hold of you. Take out the worm enemy on this platform before continuing on. You'll have a split here, climb upwards and go through this part. The bottom path just ends up leading to a waterfall pit. Going through this opening on the right side leads us to the mid-boss, the Minotaur guy. He kind of just jumps one space either in front of him or backwards, wherever you're going, and whatever direction you're at will be the direction he tries to take. On the right side here where the door is, though, it's kind of a secret cubby. You kind of hang out here and be perfectly safe from the Minotaur's attacks. When you end up coming back to this level later on, once we beat the bonus stage, this is actually where we will restart the stage, after that Minotaur fight. Over here to the right, this big room here, that big open room, that's actually the secret exit. But in order to get the floor to open up, we have to hit a dynamite candlestick. I told you about those dynamite candlesticks being traps before. Well, one of them ends up opening up the secret floor that leads us to that bonus level. When you make it up here, you'll have the choice either going up the left side to finish up the stage, or the right side in the rope, which will lead us to that bonus level. On the next screen, you have to go against logic and fall down this pit. Yep, this pit right here will lead you to falling down here, and you have to be careful when you do so that you land safely on this platform to hit the candles, dynamite and all, to open up the floor below and then fall on through the now big opening, and this leads you to the bonus level of Castlevania Legends. This bonus level is themed like a dungeon, as expected, as we dropped way down to the depths of the castle in order to kind of find this place. Honestly, it's not like the most amazing as far as design or anything like that. It's pretty much standard for most of the levels in this game. Be careful at the end here that you grab this giant rope and fall down and go down the pit. After going down the rope, get off immediately and go up the top set of platforms and work your way across there. The bottom path just leads to that dead end. Drop on down and then once again grab the rope and climb on down to the next area below. Take out the spear guy on the bottom and work your way across. The top path, once again, is another one of those dead end paths. Have a couple of bats and ghosts before we reach the door to the next area. After entering this room, we get stuck midway through, and all of a sudden ghosts start attacking us from the left and right sides. Just kind of turn back and forth. You can use one of your special abilities. I'm going to use mine here a bit, just to help me kind of showcase the wave-like magic ability that we got as well. After dealing with a few of them, though, they'll disappear and you'll be able to continue onwards, climbing up the rope on the right side. Once here, on the next floor, you'll have a zombie. Follow it off the screen to the right and continue along this path. This is the room that contains the secret sub-weapon collectible for this level. On the bottom path, work your way all the way over to the right. Right above us is a spear guy guarding one candle. That is the candle that contains the last collectible that we need in the game. After grabbing the cross item and now having the ability to get the best ending, we're going to do a little bit of backtracking to the previous screen and go the other path, of course. After climbing up these stairs, you'll have another split. There's a rope to the top left, as well as another opening on the top right. We want to continue along the level on the top right. We're nearing the end of the level here. Watch out for the merman lizard-like guys that pop out from the floor below. They can fire out fireballs from the distance as well, so be careful of that before going through the door. Here, you're going to want to take the bottom path, watching out for the ghost-like entities flying towards you before making it to the showdown against the Executioner boss. Like the boss earlier with the dragon, we're going to hit this candle on the right to get the orb that will then summon the Executioner guy. We're then going to use the burning ability to just kind of step right in front of him and just keep hitting him with the whip. That's all you got to do. Extremely easy. Now granted, if you don't have the burning ability, this is a little bit harder of a fight, but as you can see, it doesn't take a whole lot of damage to kill him. But he does do a hefty amount of damage to you if he does end up hitting you. So if you're not using that burning ability, make sure you keep your distance. Now you want to continue through this area like we did before. I go to the left for just a second before realizing and remembering I have to actually go to the upper right side. So be careful of that. Continue climbing up and using the rope, dealing with the night guy above here, and then continue on to that next room. But unlike last time, we're not going to be falling through the floor. Instead, we're going to be continuing on the stage towards Dracula. For the next area here, you have a bunch of knights on platforms and worm guys working across the bottom. Deal with the worm guys and knights on their platforms. There really won't be much of a threat. You can just walk right on past them below them. Next room, pretty straightforward. Deal with a couple of knights or just bypass them on the platforms, a couple of bats, and work your way up a series of ropes. When you're on this rope here, if you want to take out the night guys, you can. They can hurt you as they kind of move to the very edge of the platform quickly, turning around. Their hitbox is still able to do some damage to you, but honestly, it's really not worth taking them out. As long as you have enough health, just keep progressing onwards. Gonna deal with this knight guy here on this platform. You can stay safely here. Be careful though, once he lunges, he can still end up damaging you like that, so make sure you're a little bit farther away than I was for that. You'll have to do that a couple of more times right after that, a few more nights, as we make it through the final real room of the game. Just after this final night guy, you'll come to a rope. If you head downwards, you can actually get to a health item, so if you don't have any hearts to spend for health or don't want to use them for that, you can take out this flower guy and grab a piece of meat in the candle on the right, and then climb on back up the ladder. Keep on climbing up to the next portion, and this actually leads us to the room where we will encounter Dracula, the final boss of Castlevania Legends. Now, with Dracula, he ends up disappearing and reappearing in various spots. The thing is, the pattern is set. So, once you've learned the pattern of where he's going to end up disappearing and reappearing at, it's easy to keep track of him and follow him throughout the room. It's not a random disappearance thing like in a lot of other games, so very easy to kind of get this pattern down and deal with him. He has 2 forms though, so you don't want to use the burning ability on that first form, save it for the second one. For this first form, all he does is teleport around, and after he teleports, he'll end up opening up his cape, shooting out 5 fireballs in different directions. If you're far enough away, they're easier to dodge, and then you'll work your way close in order to continue attacking him. Once you've done enough damage, though, you have a bit of dialogue before the real final boss begins. So here we go, the final boss of Castlevania Legends is a giant dragon. He has a head that will teleport just like the main Dracula itself. The battlefield's a little bit different. There's pits that you'll have to watch out for. Definitely use your burning ability in order to attack the dragon head whenever it's closest to you. Just like with the battle beforehand, this boss also teleports to specific spots in a specific order each time, so once again, easy to kind of keep track of and know where he's going to be. Once you deliver the final hit though, you can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Castlevania Legends. So there you have it, Castlevania Legends for the Nintendo Game Boy, the third and final Game Boy game for Castlevania. Like I said, many it falls in the middle. I personally always liked Castlevania Legends a lot. I liked Sonya Belmont as a character. I think the burning ability was something that was kind of cool for its time as well. I don't think that Castlevania Legends is necessarily a hidden gem. I think if you're going to play any of the Castlevania Game Boy games, Belmont's Revenge is the one I definitely give the nod to. But at least it was a step up from Castlevania Adventure, though the soundtrack I always thought was a little lacking here in Legends compared to the other two Game Boy titles. As the credits finish up, we get to see one last kind of epilogue screen, and this is where the best ending thing comes into play. Because of the ending and Sonya giving birth to a child that's Alucard's is really the reason why Legends pretty much gets wiped as far as storyline is concerned. But with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.